It's October 23, Ukraine Media Center starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheprenko, and now we will be talking about the enemy strikes on Zaporizhia and Zaporizhia region, casualties, mitigation of consequences, and current situation. Joining us online is Ivan Fedorov, the military governor of Zaporizhia region. Good afternoon. Good morning, Mr. Ivan. Good morning. Yesterday, the enemy inflicted the strike on the center of Zaporizhia. So what do we know for the time being? What are the consequences and what's the status of casualties? Well, on Monday, about 9 o'clock in the morning, the enemy inflicted a strike using Iskander missile on the center of Communal district of Zaporizhia. First of all, 3 civilians were killed, more than 16 were injured. Around the area, more than 70 buildings were damaged, mostly residential buildings, plus one more 14-story dormitory, a kindergarten, and other installations of civilian infrastructure. Currently, the civilians which were injured are under constant monitoring of our doctors. Currently in the hospitals, there are 9 more people who are still staying there. So unfortunately, those are the consequences. But talking about the consequences starting from the beginning of September, when the enemy started using the guided aviation bombs on Zaporizhia, the consequences of our nation are quite horrible. More than 900 residential buildings were damaged. More than 100 were destroyed. One apartment block was destroyed to the ground, another one was partially destroyed, but it's subject to full destruction and full reconstruction from zero. 24 more apartment blocks roofs were damaged that are currently being reported by the utility service teams. The enemy continues inflicting the strikes on Zaporizhia and the region. Can you please tell us what was the last day? Well, unfortunately, those are the natural figures for us lately. The enemy inflicted more than 400 strikes on Zaporizhia region, specifically on the areas close to the front lines. The enemy inflicted strikes on Stepnohirsk, Molotokmashka, Horikhiv. The citizens were waking up to the sirens of air raid alert. Fortunately, within the last 24 hours, there were no casualties, but we have to imagine only what does it mean, 400 shells per day. The enemy was mostly using UAVs. This is the priority weapons that the enemy uses to inflict strikes in the Zaporizhia region. Well, the winter season is coming. How is Zaporizhia and Zaporizhia region preparing to heat in season, and how will the situation be solved in the areas close to the front lines? Well, unfortunately, close to the front lines, we have more than 50 settlements where heat and water and electric power supply are absent within the last 2 years. Those settlements are being heated thanks to the solid fuels, and I want to thank our foreign partners who provided donations for solid fuel heating for more than 3,000 residential buildings. Other settlements are in the same status. De jure, we fulfilled the preparation works 100%. Those are the things that we were able to do according to regulations, but our goal to provide more backup for water and heat supply during blackouts. That's why we follow a number of tracks. First, in coordination with our partners, we construct 30 megawatts of cogeneration so we could continue supplying water and heat supply to our citizens even under conditions of blackouts. Currently, the bids were completed for 12 cogeneration plants, and within the next couple of days there will be a bid finalized for 8 more cogeneration plants that we will be able to use in the Zaporizhia region. USA donated solid fuel boilers that have already been installed and commissioned in a number of healthcare facilities, 12 boilers that work off pellets, and they can provide heat to our hospitals in case of blackouts. We have 9 more boiler rooms that were sent to the communities. They are about to be installed by the end of the year, and they will be ready to supply heat to the residences. Also, we expect our foreign partners to supply diesel generators of high capacity, the total capacity of 5 megawatts, that are about to feed our water supply facilities to create the water supply backup for all of the Zaporizhia region, because those 2 plants feed all of the Zaporizhia region. Also, another challenge for us is the emergency backup for our social facilities, both education and healthcare facilities. Previously, we were understanding that 1 generator would be sufficient, but for the time being, we clearly see that 1 generator is capable of working 8 hours in a row. Then it needs a pause. If we expect to see some significant interruptions in power supply, 1 generator wouldn't be enough, and we back it up with 2 or 3 more generators, in the first place in the healthcare facilities, and secondly in the education facilities. 122 education facilities provide education services for the students in offline mode. They all study underground. And yet another issue is installation of generators in boiler rooms in the roofs of the residential buildings that are managed by the residents' unions. Those buildings also fall under rolling power shutdown schedules, and we need to create the backups for them. Is the equipment that you get from the donors, from volunteers, from international partners, is it sufficient, and what is the percentage of coverage of demands in the region? Well, I cannot answer this question. We've just finalized the 3-year program of decentralization. We are about to build 300 megawatts of cogeneration. By this year, we're about to build 30 megawatts. The plan for the next year is 130 megawatts. We don't know where we are about to get it from, but this is the plan. So I appreciate all of the efforts of our international partners. They respond to all of our initiatives, and we do appreciate it. Well, yesterday it was found out that the power technicians reestablished the power supply from the central Ukrainian power grid to Zaporizhia region. Well, the Zaporizhian grid is being shelled on a constant basis. The Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is still under the control of the enemy, and the enemy continues being responsible for its safety and security. The enemy who occupied a territory is extremely dangerous, not only for the Zaporizhia region, but for Europe, for all of our country, for all of the European continent. The enemy continues blackmailing us with the control of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And talking about other crimes of the Russians, what do you know about the situation in occupied territories? What do the Russian occupation authorities do there? Well, the latest news is the enemy continues convicting our citizens. Only within the last couple of days or weeks, we see a lot of examples when our citizens were convicted to 15 to 20 years under the premises of terrorist activity. That's the biggest fabrication. The enemy continues imprisoning our civilians, charging them in a fabricated manner on illegal activity. and then the enemy announces their court resolutions. This is the biggest challenge for the time being and the biggest threat. Well, previously the Russians were pressing on our citizens with passportization, and now I understand that the biggest pressure is exercised against those who look suspiciously or are not in compliance with the policies exercised by the occupiers. Well, currently when the enemy arrests our citizens, they don't do it to catch, say, a criminal. They just create panic around it. The enemy tries to intimidate all of the other civilians by capturing at least one of them. This is their program, this is their key program, and this is what they do in temporary occupation. Thank you very much, Mr. Ivan, for your answers. Let me remind you, we were talking with Mr. Ivan Fedorov, the military governor of Zaporizhia region, and Ukraine Media Center will continue at 12 o'clock. We will talk about the enemy's attacks on the Luhansk region.